Life has a peculiar way of serving up its most brutal lessons when you least expect them, often disguised as moments of profound vulnerability. I'm Harley Smith, 48 years old, and for 2 decades, the roar of a diesel engine was the soundtrack to my life. I was a long-haul truck driver, navigating the ribbons of highway that stitched together the vast expanse of the continent. It wasn't the glamorous life you see in movies, but it was honest work, and it provided a comfortable existence for my wife, Genevieve, and me in our quiet home in Flagstaff, Arizona. We didn't have much, but we had a rhythm, a routine, and I thought, a foundation built on trust. That foundation crumbled on a desolate stretch of highway outside Cheyenne, Wyoming. For weeks, I'd been dismissing a persistent tightness in my chest, attributing it to too many roadside burgers and too little sleep. Just stress, I'd tell myself, downing another lukewarm coffee. But on that Tuesday, the pain became a vice, squeezing the air from my lungs. I managed to wrestle my rig to the shoulder, the emergency lights flashing a desperate plea into the twilight. My last conscious act was dialing 911. My fingers fumbling with the phone. The next thing I knew, a medical helicopter was hovering overhead, its blades slicing through the evening air, and then merciful blackness. I woke up 2 days later in a hospital bed in Denver, Colorado, a tangle of wires and tubes sprouting from my arms, a dull ache in my chest. A kind-faced nurse, her name tag reading Brenda, explained I'd had a massive heart attack. "You flatlined twice. Mr. Smith," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You're incredibly lucky." Lucky? The word tasted like ash. My phone, lying on the nightstand, buzzed with a single notification. It was from Genevieve. We'd been married for 17 years, no children, just the shared silence of our home and the occasional rushed dinner between my long hauls. I tapped open the message. It was a screenshot of our joint bank account. The balance read $0. Below it, a chilling message. "I deserve this after everything I've done for you." $73,812.47. My life savings. My truck's emergency repair fund. My retirement nest egg vanished. I should have felt a tidal wave of fury. Despair, maybe. But all I felt was an overwhelming exhaustion, deeper than any fatigue from a cross-country drive. It was a bone-deep weariness that sleep couldn't possibly cure. My only response was a single thumbs-up emoji. What else was there to say? When Dr. Jones, a stern but compassionate man, came in later, he laid out my recovery plan. Strict bed rest, no stress, and absolutely no driving for at least 2 months. He asked if someone would be picking me up the following day. Yes, I lied, the word catching in my throat. That night, alone in the sterile silence of my hospital room, I made one call. To my younger brother, Owen. He lived in the same city, but on the other side of town. We hadn't spoken much in recent years, not out of animosity, but because our lives had diverged. He was a master plumber, always busy with local contracts, while I was perpetually on the road. "I need a favor," I rasped, my voice still weak. "Anything," Owen replied without a moment's hesitation. "I need a place to crash for a few days, and I need you to keep it quiet. Don't tell Genevieve." There was a beat of silence, then Owen's concerned voice. "She doesn't know you're alive?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, she knows. She just doesn't know I'm not coming home." Genevieve and I had met at a truck stop diner outside Reno. She was a waitress then, her smile as bright as the neon sign outside. I was just passing through, grabbing a greasy breakfast before another long stretch. We talked for hours, and I felt a connection I hadn't known existed. We were married 6 months later. It felt fast, but right. I was 31. She was 28. Young enough to be hopeful, old enough to be sensible. She never truly liked my trucking career, the long absences, and the solitary nights. But she certainly enjoyed the comfortable life my paycheck afforded her. I'd call every night, no matter where I was, sometimes for an hour, sometimes just a quick check-in. As the years wore on, the calls grew shorter, eventually dwindling to hurried texts. Made it to Austin, All good here. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle but persistent. She stopped asking when I'd be home, started taking trips with friends I'd never met. Her phone always just out of my sight. But I trusted her. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Trust. Owen, his face etched with concern, helped me into his spare room. He'd been divorced once, knew a thing or two about the sharp edges of betrayal. You should eat something, he urged, handing me a plate piled high with scrambled eggs and toast. I wasn't hungry. My mind was a chaotic jumble of thoughts. The house I'd bought, the mortgage I'd recently refinanced solely in my name when interest rates dropped. Genevieve had claimed to be too busy to attend the signing, so I'd handled it, not thinking twice. And then there was the medical power of attorney I'd set up a year ago, after my friend Leo's stroke left him incapacitated and his girlfriend unable to make crucial decisions. My niece, Chloe, Owen's daughter, a brilliant law student at the University of Colorado, had helped me with the paperwork, ensuring every I was dotted and every T crossed. "Does Genevieve know you're here?" Owen asked, his gaze piercing. "No," I said, picking at the eggs, "and we're going to keep it that way for a little while." "She took everything?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. "What are you going to do?" I finally took a bite of the eggs. They tasted like nothing. "I'm going to get some rest. Doctor's orders." But that night, sleep was a distant luxury. I stared at the ceiling, replaying 1,000 small moments, each a tiny stitch in a tapestry of deceit. Genevieve's hushed phone calls, her sudden secrecy with her passwords, the inexplicable transfers between accounts for better interest rates. I'd been blind, but no more. On my third day at Owen's, a text came through from our next-door neighbor, Clara. "Haven't seen you around, Harley. Everything all right? Genevieve's got some guy over. Thought you should know." I sat with that for a long time, the words burning themselves into my mind. I didn't reply. Later that afternoon, Owen drove me to a bank branch downtown, far from our usual neighborhood bank where Genevieve and I were known. I asked to speak with a fraud specialist. I showed her the screenshot of the zero balance, explained my hospitalization, my unconscious state, the unauthorized withdrawals. The woman, Miss Ramirez, maintained a professional composure, but I saw the flicker in her eyes pity, perhaps even a hint of righteous anger. "Mr. Smith," she said, her voice measured, "we can certainly initiate a fraud investigation. However, given it's a joint account and your wife had equal access, it may prove challenging." "I understand," I interjected, my voice firm, "but I'd like to try anyway." She nodded, her fingers already flying across her keyboard. "We'll need records from the hospital, confirming your stay, particularly documentation of your incapacitated periods." "Not a problem," I said. "And you should be aware, if this escalates, the police will become involved." I met her gaze. "I'm aware." On the way back to Owen's, we stopped for gas. I stayed in the car, watching Owen pump fuel, the ordinary tableau of a father buying ice cream for his kids from the convenience store, a stark contrast to the earthquake that had just ripped through my life. "Want anything?" Owen asked, peering through the windshield. I shook my head. Back at his place, I made 3 phone calls. First, to my dispatcher, requesting extended medical leave. Second, to the credit union where I kept a small business account for independent jobs. Third, to a lawyer friend of Owen's, a sharp woman named Rita. "I need to know where I stand," I explained, my voice devoid of emotion. "With the house, the accounts, everything." Rita Agbaker to meet the next day. I hung up and pulled out my laptop, logging into accounts Genevieve didn't even know existed, checking the status of investments she'd never once inquired about. Not because I was hiding anything, but because she'd simply never shown interest in the boring parts of our finances. As I was doing that, another text came through, this time from Genevieve. "Where are you? Your truck isn't at the depot. Did they tell you I came by?" I didn't answer. "Harley, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear. We need to talk about this." I put the phone face down. Owen looked over from the kitchen. She reaching out? Yeah. You going to respond? I closed my laptop. Not yet. That night, I took a long walk around Owen's neighborhood. The sky was a vast canvas of stars, even with a faint glow of the city lights. For the first time since the hospital, my chest didn't ache. Not physically. Anyway, and in that quiet solitude, a profound realization settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. And with that came a chilling clarity. Genevieve hadn't just taken my money. She'd inadvertently given me my F-Baccarum. A week after my discharge, I finally went home. It was the middle of the day when I knew Genevieve would be at her office job. I used my key, stepping into the house I'd shared with her for so long. It smelled different, a faint scent of unfamiliar cologne hanging in the air. Empty wine bottles clinked in the recycling bin. 2 wine glasses in the dishwasher. I walked through the quiet rooms, a ghost in my own life. I packed a duffel bag with clothes, gathered my important papers, and retrieved the small lockbox from the back of the closet, where I kept my birth certificate and passport. As I walked out, I noticed the framed photo from our wedding day was missing from the hallway table. Back at Owen's, I met with Rita, the lawyer. We sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out between us. The house situation is interesting, she said, reviewing the refinancing documents. Since you refinanced solely in your name, with that specific medical clause, and given your recent cardiac event, you have a very strong case for sole possession. What about the money she took? Rita frowned. That's trickier. Joint accounts typically imply joint ownership. But she tapped a finger on the bank statements. The fact that she cleared it out while you were medically incapacitated could very well constitute financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, especially since you have documentation that these were primarily your earnings. I nodded. And if I want a divorce? Colorado is an equitable distribution state, Rita explained. Given the circumstances, I think we can make a compelling case for a settlement heavily in your favor. She gathered the papers. I'll draft some initial documents. In the meantime, don't contact her. Don't respond if she reaches out. Everything goes through me now. The very next day, Genevieve showed up at Owen's house. I was alone, Owen at work. I heard her car pull up, heard the familiar slam of her door, but didn't look out the window. The doorbell rang 3 times. Then she started pounding. I know you're in there, Harley. Your truck is parked down the street. Her voice, muffled through the door, sounded shrill, desperate. You can't just hide. We need to talk about this. I sat perfectly still in the living room, like a child playing a very serious game of hide and seek. Eventually, the knocking stopped. I thought she'd left, until my phone buzzed. I'm sorry about the money. I was angry. You've been distant for months. I thought you were cheating. I found out about the house refinancing and panicked. We can work this out. Please talk to me. Cheating. It was the first time she'd ever accused me of it. Projection, perhaps. I turned the phone face down without replying. The following day, Rita called with news. Genevieve contacted me, she said. She's hired Evelyn Baker as her attorney. Evelyn Baker, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the state, known for her scorched earth tactics, for going after everything. Houses, retirement accounts, future earnings. What does that mean for us? I asked, my heart thumping a little faster. It means she's not playing around. Baker is already claiming that your abandonment after the hospitalization constitutes desertion. She's painting you as unstable, saying you disappeared without explanation and are refusing communication. I let out a long breath. So, what now? Now, we get ahead of this, Rita said, her voice firm. I've filed for an emergency hearing regarding the funds she withdrew. Judge Campbell is presiding. He takes a very dim view of taking advantage of medical situations. After hanging up, I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I made another call, to my niece, Chloe. I needed her help with something specific. That evening, I drove past our house. Genevieve's car was in the driveway. alongside a sleek black SUV I didn't recognize. I circled the block once, then headed back to Owens. As I pulled into the driveway, a text came through from an unknown number. "This is Evelyn Baker. I represent Genevieve Smith. Any further surveillance of my client will be documented as harassment. All communication must go through proper legal channels." They were watching me. I was watching them. And now the gloves were off. 2 weeks after that first meeting with Rita, we had our day in court. The emergency hearing regarding the withdrawn funds. Genevieve was there with Evelyn Baker, both in sharp, expensive suits. I wore the only tie I owned, the one I kept in my truck for unexpected funerals on the road. Judge Campbell was an older woman with a severe bun and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She reviewed the filings without expression, occasionally looking up at Genevieve, then at me. "Miss Baker," she finally said, her voice a low rumble, "your client withdrew the entirety of the joint accounts while Mr. Smith was hospitalized for a life-threatening cardiac event. Is that correct?" Baker stood, her posture rigid. "Your Honor, my client had every right to access those joint funds. Furthermore, Mr. Smith had recently refinanced their marital home solely in his name, without Mrs. Smith's knowledge, which we contend was the first act of financial deception." The judge removed her glasses. "I'm not asking about the house right now, Counselor. I'm asking about the timing of the withdrawal. Was your client aware that Mr. Smith was in the hospital when she took the money?" Genevieve leaned over and whispered something to Baker. Baker cleared her throat. "Yes, Your Honor, but my client was under extreme emotional distress, believing her marriage was ending. She acted to protect herself financially." The judge put her glasses back on. "While unconscious from a heart attack seems an unlikely time for Mr. Smith to end his marriage." She shuffled some papers. "I'm ordering the funds frozen pending further proceedings. Neither party may access this money until ownership is determined in the divorce settlement." It wasn't a complete win, but it stopped Genevieve from spending any more. As we left the courtroom, Genevieve tried to approach me. Baker held her back with a hand on her arm, but not before Genevieve said, "Harley, please, there's so much you don't understand." I walked past without looking at her. Outside, Rita was satisfied. "This is just the beginning. Now we start discovery." Discovery, the part where all the cards get laid on the table. A week later, Rita called me to her office. When I arrived, a thick folder waited on her desk. "We've got something," she said, sliding it across. Inside was a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize. Genevieve's name was on it. The balance, $127,340.56. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Your niece found it. Chloe's internship at the Downtown Credit Union had given her some unique insights. This account was opened 18 months ago," Rita continued. "Regular deposits, always just under $10,000, just under the reporting threshold. Classic sign of hiding money." She paused, letting that sink in. "There's more." The deposits, Rita explained, aligned perfectly with my long-haul schedule. When I was gone, money went in. I sat back, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "She's been planning this for a year and a half." Rita shook her head. "I don't think she was planning to leave you, Harley. I think she was preparing in case you left her." "Why would I leave her?" I asked, the words laced with bitterness. "I was working myself to death to provide for us." That's when Rita slid over another piece of paper, a credit card statement with a hotel charge from a place in Minneapolis. Date, 3 months ago. I'd been in Seattle that week. The name on the reservation, Paul Jensen. Paul, our neighbor, the one who texted me about the guy over. Rita's face was grim. "We think Paul has been involved with Genevieve for some time. He was creating a false trail to make you suspicious while they were together. The betrayal wasn't just Genevieve. It was coordinated, planned. Paul, playing concerned neighbor while sleeping with my wife. Genevieve, draining our accounts while I was fighting for my life. I stood up. "What's our next move?" Rita smiled for the first time that day. "That's up to you. But if I were in your shoes, I'd make sure they both regret ever thinking they could get away with this." I spent the next month living at Owen's, recovering physically while Rita meticulously built our case. We had a strategy now: document everything, gather undeniable evidence of Genevieve and Paul's relationship, and prove the financial deception. My niece, Chloe, was invaluable. Her position at the credit union gave us insights into financial patterns we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Nothing illegal, just connecting dots that were already in plain sight. "The account has another person with access," she told me one evening, her brow furrowed. "Not a joint owner, but an authorized user." "Paul, I guessed." She nodded. "And there's something else. They've started moving money, smaller amounts, to different accounts. They know we're onto them." I stared out the window. "They're liquidating, getting ready to run." That night, I called Rita. "We need to move faster." "I agree," she said, "but we need to be careful. If we tip our hand too soon, they'll disappear with everything." "So what do we do?" I finished. Rita was quiet for a moment. "We need leverage, something that makes them think twice about running." The next day, I drove to our house. I knew Genevieve would be at work. I didn't go inside. Instead, I walked the property line, taking photos with my phone. The new shed Paul had helped build last summer. The fancy landscaping that had mysteriously appeared while I was on a 3-week haul to California. Improvements paid for with my money, likely installed by Paul, increasing the property value of the home that was now solely in my name. I sent the photos to Rita with a simple message: documented. 2 days later, Genevieve's lawyer called Rita with an unexpected offer. Genevieve would return 50% of the withdrawn funds in exchange for 50% equity in the house. "They're testing us," Rita said when she called to tell me, "seeing if we'll settle cheap." "What do we tell them?" I asked. "Nothing yet. Let them sweat." Meanwhile, I made another move. I contacted my trucking company's HR department, explained my situation, and inquired about the disability insurance I'd been paying into for 20 years. "You're entitled to 60% of your salary for up to 12 months, the HR representative explained. "Given your cardiac event and the doctor's restrictions, you easily qualify." I filed the paperwork that day. Another source of income that Genevieve didn't know about. Wouldn't be included in any settlement discussions yet. The next week, I had Owen drive me past our house again. This time, I noticed something new: a for sale sign on Paul's lawn. "He's cutting and running," Owen said, his voice grim. I nodded. "Call Chloe." An hour later, Chloe confirmed our suspicion. Paul had cleared out his accounts 2 days earlier. Nearly $90,000 withdrawn in cashier's checks. I called Rita immediately. "We need to act now. Paul's selling his house. Genevieve might be planning to go with him." Rita didn't hesitate. "I'll file for an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow morning, freezing all assets and preventing property sales without court approval." The next morning, I woke to a text from Genevieve. "We need to talk. Just you and me. No lawyers." I showed it to Owen. "They're desperate," he said. I nodded. "Good." I forwarded the text to Rita, who replied, "Don't respond. Injunction hearing is at 2 p.m. At 1:30, I was walking into the courthouse when I spotted Genevieve and Paul together in the parking lot, arguing. They didn't see me. I took out my phone and recorded them from a distance. 30 seconds of irrefutable evidence showing their relationship, something they'd been so careful to hide from legal proceedings. Inside, Rita was waiting. I showed her the video. "Perfect timing," she said, a small smirk playing on her lips. "Judge Campbell is already in a mood today." I straightened my tie. "Then let's not keep her waiting." Judge Campbell's chambers were smaller than the courtroom. Just the judge, the 2 lawyers, Genevieve, and me. Paul wasn't allowed in. He wasn't a party to the divorce. The video of them together played on the judge's computer. No sound, but their body language spoke volumes. "Miss Baker," Judge Campbell said when it finished, her voice dangerously quiet, "would you care to explain why your client has been declaring under oath that she has no relationship with this neighbor, when video evidence clearly shows otherwise?" Baker looked visibly shaken. "Your Honor, the nature of their relationship isn't relevant to the financial matters at hand. It is when financial fraud is being alleged." The judge turned to Genevieve. "Mrs. Smith, are you planning to leave the state with Mr. Jensen?" Genevieve's face went pale. I don't. Let me rephrase," the judge continued, her voice gaining momentum. "The court has evidence that you and Mr. Jensen have been moving substantial sums of money, that Mr. Jensen is selling his property, and that you withdrew funds from joint accounts while your husband was incapacitated. This suggests a pattern of deception and intent to flee." She looked at both lawyers. "I'm issuing an immediate freeze on all assets belonging to both Genevieve Smith and Paul Jensen. Neither may leave the county without court permission. Additionally," she turned to me, "given Mr. Smith's medical condition and the evidence of financial exploitation during his incapacity, I'm granting temporary exclusive use of the marital home to Mr. Smith." Genevieve made a small choked sound. "Your Honor," Baker began, but the judge held up a hand. "The exploitation of a medically vulnerable spouse is something this court takes very seriously. Counselor, you're lucky I'm not recommending criminal charges at this time." Rita gathered her papers, trying not to look too satisfied. As we left, Genevieve caught my eye. For the first time, I saw fear there, not of me, but of consequences. 3 months after the heart attack, I moved back into our house, my house now. The divorce was finalized faster than anyone expected. Genevieve didn't put up a fight after that injunction hearing. Paul, her partner in deceit, had disappeared, leaving her to face everything alone. In the end, Judge Campbell awarded me the house, my truck, and 80% of our savings. Genevieve got her car and the remaining 20%. The secret account, the one Chloe found, was split 50-50, but only after Genevieve paid my legal fees from her share. I never spoke to her directly again. Everything went through our lawyers. The last I heard, she'd moved to Minneapolis, starting over, I guess. I sold the house 6 months later. Too many memories, too much lingering bitterness in the air. I bought a smaller place closer to Owen and Chloe. It's a quiet street, and I spend my evenings watching the sunset from my porch, a luxury I rarely had on the road. Some of the money went to help Chloe with law school. She's going to make a hell of an attorney someday, sharp as a tack and with a keen eye for injustice. I don't drive long haul anymore. My heart can't take the stress, the endless hours behind the wheel. The doctor was clear about that. Instead, I found work dispatching at a local logistics company. I'm home every night. It's quieter than the open road, certainly less adventurous, but there's something to be said for stability, for knowing where you'll lay your head each night. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry about what happened, and honestly, I'm not. Not anymore. You can't control what others do, only how you respond. Genevieve thought she was taking everything from me that day in the hospital, stripping me bare. Instead, she forced me to fight for myself in a way I never had before. She forced me to see who I truly was, separate from the identity of a provider, a husband. Just last week, I was cleaning out some old boxes, the ones I hadn't touched since moving in, and I found our wedding album. For a moment, I considered tossing it, consigning it to the trash, but I didn't. I just put it back in the box. It's part of my story now, not the end, just a chapter. The heart attack nearly killed me. The betrayal nearly broke me. But I'm still here. Changed, maybe. Stronger, definitely. Some lessons you learn the hard way. Some people you lose for a good reason. And sometimes the life you rebuild is far better than the one you lost.